Hello, everybody. My name is Aaron Dowdy, and I have pounding children in the background. It's going to be very professional, but I'm here to share with you guys a little episode of my life and a project that I'm doing. But for now, let's get started into the article. I am a writer and now an ex-principal, and let me just introduce you who I am through this article. So, fighting for the fighting for the literacy of the next generation. A principal fired for encouraging teens to read, and now won't be silenced. And as the article says, I wish I could say I was exaggerating, but I'm not. I was fired for reading classics around my students. Now, as the article will tell you, there were more reasons, but they were mostly just exaggerations, lies, and it all kind of came down to the fact that they didn't like the types of books I was reading around them, and they didn't like me and my worldview. So let's get into it. I was fired for reading classics around my students. I wish I could say I was exaggerating, but I'm not. They even put the point on the fancy legal paper. They, child, I'm recording. They even put that point on the fancy legal paper that they worked up to take away any chances of at unemployment benefits. There were other reasons, ranging from straight up lies to even more absurdity, including during one of our Bible studies, I asked what the students wanted to do with their lives, and that was apparently asking a secular question. That's a strange one for me, but hey, a principal worried about the student's future. Scandalous. Because I was a principal, you may ask, why did I sign the paper? Because I was a principal and the only one in the room who was putting the students before my own interests. Any money I took from the school, I would take from those students. That was never going to be an option, and it really wasn't. So the school was on a really tight budget as it was. I was actually starting this project I'm about to share with you guys before I got fired, but it changed a lot. I was actually trying to get to the point where I could work for free and then, you know, use the money off the project and the encouraging kids to read on the side. But, you know, people have different ideas. So a big one too was they were paying me so little, I had nothing. So I needed that next paycheck. I Part of the stipulation was they expected me to be on food stamps to work at this school. I'm not even kidding. That was kind of planned. And I was willing to do that because I cared so much about my students and I wanted to see them succeed. I didn't even know who they were when I made that decision, but I have a passion for the youth. And I hope I can share a little bit of that as we go. So, what is the big, bad, nasty book that started this all? War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy was the naughty, no good, bad book that gained me the ire of accusers on the board. That's right. I read classics around my students in the hopes of convincing them to read excellent literature on their own time. I was making progress too, and that I realized was now the problem. Like you'll learn this in a world that's insane like ours. You'll start making some progress with your students or with kids you're working with or just people in general, and powers that be around them, whether it's school boards, teachers, parents, will take them away from you because you're starting to make progress. It's a horrible crab in the bucket type thing. I assume there's something more spiritual about it, but I can say I've seen it both in my life and in my wife's time working with kids and all the rest. We've just seen it again and again. Easy kid. And there's my kids wanting to be constantly, but you gotta love it. So your worldview is not allowed, and it really isn't. If you're not an insane person, your worldview is not allowed. Right in the fine print, I was told the problem with me reading War and Peace during break time around my students was spreading my worldview, which was apparently was very dangerous. So dangerous that my own uncle fired me without warning. Yeah, did I mention my own family was involved with this school and were willing to throw out my children on the street and everything because of this silly, absurd reasons. I, I'll never get over that. You will be stabbed in the back when you truly have a passion for something and you're fighting for something. Do not be surprised from the angles that you'll get stabbed in the back from. This wasn't a large school either, but a tiny Christian school attached to a church. Yeah. Homeschool or die, baby, and that's what we get into. And as it says, more than just homeschool or die, I am here not to complain but to create. The older generations have no intention of teaching the youth of tomorrow anything. My heart screams for the plight of the young men and women coming into a world so ill equipped, not just in academics, but for the deeper questions of life, or the uplifting spirit only classical literature and high art can bring. That's why I'm not going to be silenced and cast aside so easily. And this is really important, guys. The absurdity of the last couple generations, from boomers to Gen X to even millennials, of insulting Gen Alpha, Gen Z, saying, "Oh, look at these kids, how bad they are," when it was their job to teach them. It was their job to grow them. And if they don't like the way they turned out, it is squarely on their fault. It squarely on their heads. It's their fault. And they don't want to recognize that. And I've seen this act of sabotage so much in other areas as well. And I refuse to stand for it anymore. I don't care how much they tear my life down. I am going to teach the next generation what they need to know to survive. And that's that. Because quite frankly, all these people who keep casting guys like me aside are going to be dead in a few, like 10 years anyway. So why do we care what they think? That's boomers for you. Better books, more reading. A simple idea, but looking at the hellscape that is the modern bookstore, the concept is a necessity. New books written to the perspectives of the up and coming generations that are excellent to read and a gateway to the classics of the past. Get a man to read, and he will read his whole life, but you must write books that speak to him. Like, if you've ever wondered why the fantasy written, say, with J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis are so unique compared to the fantasy of today, is because they were writing from reading too, but writing from perspective, both from reading classics of the past and from their own lives and adding to it. Both of them had seen World War One and the chaos of World War Two and all this other stuff. Now, I'm not suggesting. Remember, Tolkien hated anyone who even hinted at the idea that there are analogies for the world wars. They're not, but there are stories speaking to people who went through this time period. And that's what we need to get the next generations reading. They need something written specifically towards them. And then they'll realize, hopefully, that's the hope, that there are classics from times like their own in the past that'll speak to them. But first, you got to go directly to what they need. And, just the popularity of Lord of the Rings and books and all this else tells me that people still want to read if they're given literature that they actually want to read and that speak to them. And so, our generations of millennials and older have very little concept of what these young people will face. We really don't. We're watching the collapse of an empire, right? The United States is an empire; it's collapsing. Pax Americana is dying out, and all our generations have ever known is Pax Americana. That's it. The and when it's gone, we don't know what it's going to look like. We can guess from children running everywhere, very professional. We can guess from previous things like Rome and all the rest. But this next generation sees this coming. They do if you look at their videos and all the things they're talking about. And so they have a completely different perspective on life than we do. So they need books written for them specifically. Generations that will see the collapse of empires and principalities of power need a voice written to them. Unlike the boomers who are convinced the world ends with them, these new generations must build in the ashes of the old world or be destroyed. So I've started a Kickstarter for a book I hope will speak to the hearts of young men and women looking at a tidal wave coming at their countries and civilizations in the hopes that they will start reading and looking for higher literature afterwards. And this is what this is all about. This is a start. This is me saying, no, you cannot silence me, boomers, Gen Xers, weird millennials, children screaming in the background. I love you, kids, right? You can't do it. My own family has tried to shut me up for the simple thing of helping kids to read and telling them that they have to rebuild civilization as it comes, that they have to be strong for that. This is the big bad worldview that has to die out because the generations before us either actively want our civilizations to die, actively want the world to die with them. Like, why do you think all the ones in like Christian circles are obsessed with the idea that the apocalypse is going to happen with them, right? because they're scared of death. They're scared of facing all of children everywhere. I love it. Facing the music for what they've done. And you know what? That's why the next generations don't respect them at all. So this is where I'm coming from in this. I am part of the problem generations, and I want to do anything I can to help the next generations be prepared for what's coming. So this is just a small part, just a very small part, and the first start of a very long endeavor. And it's called Tales from the Dead Sector: Gods of Science and Sin. I'll just read the description here. It's a book born from censorship, as the main character is betrayed by the very kings he strives to save, and must rally the living against the unending legions of undead. In a world with a cult of atheist madmen burning civilization down around them, only a religious man of war can hope to fight them, a paladin out of time who will stand for no corruption. And as this says, if that speaks to you and the cause to uplift generations facing such an uphill battle of rebuilding crumbling world, I think, whew, fix that. A crumbling world is keen on your mind, then click on the picture link below. Click on the link. Go to the Kickstarter. Join in. It's going to be a lot of fun, guys. You're going to enjoy it. For all of us who lived through COVID and saw the insanity of the tranny movement, this novel is really going to speak to you. But it's also going to be really entertaining and great. Because guess what? You can put all the messaging you want in a book, but if it's not a great story, then there's no point in writing it because no one's going to read it. And without great literature, without just really fun, good romps, good books that people could just pick up and read, without having to expand their brains constantly, then people will never jump into the classics afterwards. So this is my hope: a nice starter stepping stone for people on their literary journey, geared directly towards the next generations. So, also, if you want to, go to my Substack, it's going to be up by the time I put this up. Subscribe here. Go to the Kickstarter. Do the thing. I know marketing, you're only supposed to say one thing, but really, join it all. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to put a lot out. I'm going to be putting up 1,000-word episodes from the novel every day of the Kickstarter, and then once a week after that. So you can actually read it before you join it. And you can see I'm not just full of crazy, man. I have been writing in the past. I'm more than just a dreamer. I've written books before. I know what I'm doing. So come along for this wild ride, because God's just getting started.